Welcome to the session Beyond Telehealth, What's Next for Virtual Care. We're excited to hear from hospitals on their experiences with virtual care. I will now turn the time over to the moderator for this session, Mr. Kerry Stratton, Global Director, Healthcare Solutions at InterSystems. Mr. Stratton, over to you, please.
Yes, thank you, Cindy. First, I'd like to thank Pinky Fadalon and the HMA organisation for actually asking InterSystems to be part of this whole virtual event, and also for asking me to moderate what I think is a really interesting and top of mind topic in the region, this panel session. And I'd also like to welcome our two esteemed guests, Dr. Niwat Bunian, Deputy CEO, Group 4, Bangkok Dusit Medical Services in Thailand, and Mr. Ignacio Nacho, Diaz Sanchez, Chief Information Officer at Bumrungrad International Hospital, also in Thailand. Now, Dr. Niwat's up in the north part of Thailand, up in Chiang Mai, and Nacho, of course, is working out of Bangkok at Bumrungrad. Now, I think both of our guests, who I'm sure you'll all know, have many, many years of healthcare IT experience. And of more recent years, where we've got into telehealth and telemedicine, I think they've become more than experienced in this, especially over the last 18 months, 2 years with COVID. So I think today's session will be extremely interesting. I think both of our guests have got a lot of experience and a lot of things to contribute with regard to what their organisations are both doing, but also their opinions, their personal opinions of where we've been over the last 18 months with telehealth specifically, and where we're going now more into virtual healthcare and what it means going forward. So shall we start off? With what we've looked at, or what your experiences have been with telehealth, and where you would hope it to extend to virtual care using technology, what we've been able to achieve, but what could we have done better? Maybe Dr. Niwat, maybe I'd ask you first. You've been using telehealth in your organisation. What do you think that we could have done better, or could do better going forward as we move into virtual healthcare?
Thank you, Terry. First of all, I want to thank Hospital Management Asia and InterSystem to let me have a chance to join this virtual event. As I am a user, not a producer, so I want to share you something, especially during this hard time of the COVID-19, because everything have to be done from each individual station or home, as we are facing nowadays. That I have to approach from Chiang Mai, some in Singapore, Nacho from Spain. But nowadays our daily life is something like this, and everything surrounding us push us to keep apart. Even my family or even my worker, and everybody get used to the word of working from home. But for medicine, I mean, the picture of medicine yes, we do have the experience of the Thai patients and the experience of the international patients. We try to connect our patients from their home to the hospital. And some technology is available. And of course, we are very struggling among all those technology, which is a bunch of differences. Because as you know, one of the things that we are facing in Thailand, I mean, the geographical are not hard as in Indonesia or in India. In India, the country is huge. In Indonesia, it's scattering. It's an island, so the technology is moving very fast. But in Thailand, we still have a very good transportations. I mean, it's easy to approach to Bangkok. It's easy approach to a big city in Thailand that you may all know about the Phuket in the south, Chiang Mai in the north, or Bangkok in the center of the Thailand. So the event we facing is that how can we gathering all those scattering, I mean, from stations that are part our work today. The informations we gathering from the patients, the informations we gathering from the doctor, and the informations we gathering during in the hospital. So that's one of the things, because everybody have to be very careful to mobilize or to stay still at home. So gathering of the data and interpretations of the data, and of course, sharing of the data and interoperability of the software or the data or the results of all those data. It's very hard for us to facing nowadays. I think that's what,
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
In this
thank you for that. Did you want to add to that, Nacho? I mean, from your perspective, I know that your hospital has been using telemedicine for some time now and using it in different ways. What do you think we could have, could be done better with technology? Do you think?
Well, I think that we have been working with telemedicine, all of us, for a long time. But with COVID-19, it became a priority. And the urgency, both for patients and clinicians, dictated that we broke a few rules that if we had the time, we would have broken and implemented it properly. I don't think that it was as much as the technology. It was the readiness of an organization to provide virtual care with the quality needed. Because of the urgency, it was more important to contact the patients than actually care about the quality at the time. Of course, we have done it differently with the proper preparation and implementation. I think that what we all missed was a framework. I think that this is what the world will start building now, and we are doing that by having this conversation, where we didn't have the standards and the regulations. To which extent could we apply the telemedicine model for which specialty, for example, or for which special workflow with the patients? So telemedicine last year meant very different things for different people, but for most hospitals was the ability to connect online with a patient and have a conversation or a video call. Well, that we know that is not telemedicine, right? What I think that we will have to do better now is build the standards of the application of telemedicine to healthcare services.
Right.
I think we improvised a lot, and we went through COVID, or we're still going through COVID, But now is the time to build a solid foundation for telemedicine and provide healthcare services online that are meaningful to both the patients and the clinicians, and they have better outcomes. So I think that we did what we could in a hurry, and now it's time to regulate it and standardize and provide proper healthcare services through online services, I think.
Yeah, no, that's great. One of the things I'm lucky enough, as you know, to be involved in many different healthcare organisations in different countries, and one of the things that keeps coming back to us and myself in particular is the human touch. In a telemedicine consult, one of the things that was difficult was for patients to really feel that human touch, that relationship that they would normally have when they're meeting with their clinician face to face. And it's been one of the things that has been highlighted in many sessions like this and other sessions and polls around the world. And how do you think we can use the technology to really improve that better conversation, better feel about the consultation that you're having? How do you think we could use technology better to improve that human touch? How about you, Nacho?
I've been having this conversation a lot lately. Even in the news, some people tell me, naturally, work in a hospital, we think that telemedicine actually have killed people, for example, because they got the wrong conversation with the wrong doctors, and it was just a way to save time. But we don't like telemedicine, and a lot of people say that we need that human touch. The way I see it is that telemedicine is not there to replace the human touch. I think that telemedicine is there to complement what doctors cannot do or patients cannot do when they arrive to a hospital. I think that telemedicine works where it's more convenient for both the patient and the clinician to have that conversation online. I couldn't replace the human touch. So where is that more convenient? Well, we know that, for example, with chronic patients, it's more convenient for them to have discussion with the doctor online and receive the prescriptions by mail, for example. Yeah. They don't need to come to the hospital. Particularly, like Dr. Niwat was mentioning, in areas where distances are long or the geography doesn't permit for patients to arrive to the hospital in a short period of time. So I think that the human touch will always be needed in healthcare and medicine because treating humans. But we complement it in areas where it's more convenient for the patient to receive the results or discuss the results of a test online, and they don't need to travel to a hospital and waste their time. And the same goes for the doctors. We cannot forget the doctors, where at the moment it could be for them intrusive to have a conversation online. They want to see the patient, but when we have dedicated doctors that understand that they have to provide telemedicine services, and they have the workflows described, and they have the cases that they're going to be used for telemedicine, then it will save them time, and it will save time for the patient, and maybe it will be a better quality conversation than just having to come to the hospital and have little time with the doctor.
Okay, so Dr. Niwat, what have you had feedback from your doctors involved with telemedicine consults as to what they think about, the human touch? Have they got the same, feeling like they would if they had the patient opposite them in face consultation, or do you think we could really, do some better things with the technology to improve that? What's your feedback that you're getting?
Yeah, I agree with Nacho that we cannot replace the human touch with human-to-human contact. But anyway, we can use some technology to make it more available, such as the increased accessibility of the patients, the monitoring of the patients, yes, of course, decrease the contact time, and yes, the best thing is communications from anywhere. So this is just something make more convenient for the patients to access into the hospital. Both maybe we can mention about something about the primary care and secondary or tertiary care, something like that. Because there is nothing to replace the human touch.
No.
And yes, all the doctors are used to the way to seeking for diagnosis with those 4 kinds of things. I mean, for seeing, for palpations, for auscultations, listening, seeing, and touches. So
yes.
we cannot replace it with the technology. But anyway, yes, there's some mobile technology for ultrasound, for echo. Yes, it will be coming soon. But anyway, there's still another obstacle for those kind of technology to gathering the information for the doctor. So I think the technology just enhance some relationship with the doctor and the patients.
Yeah. Do you think the technology can actually relieve some of the clinicians' laborious tasks? Do you think we could do things better with the technology, with telemedicine, where, instead of the doctor maybe, typing things in on a computer while details about the patient, details about the condition or whatever on the computer, that it was recorded and so it leaves that doctor the ability to talk directly to the patient whilst recording the information, or other technologies which improve that conversational piece. Do you think we could improve it so that it takes away some of the tasks from the doctor, that does free them up with more time and more ability to have with their patients? What do you think, Dr. Niwa?
Of course, especially for those care from home patients.
Yes,
because there are many patients asking for combinations. I mean, how can we combine the hospital service and care from home services? Because as I mentioned before, that the limitation of mobilizations, the home, but keep distancing, and limitations of gathering people into the society. So the technology will help a lot. But as I mentioned, we have to be separately from primary care to secondary care or tertiary care.
yes.
There's many companies in China. One, I can give you the 2 examples of. One is the Tencent, and one is Ping An. The Ping An is that the technology that can gathering the information from the patient for primary care, but for the Tencent is a technology that can gathering all the information from the patients with the sophisticated investigations, and so it's maybe suitable for tertiary care. Of course,
yeah. I mean, one of the things we're hearing from other organisations and other hospitals is the fact of how maybe going forward this technology, both telemedicine but more virtual care, could help treat chronic illness patients, to save them necessarily having to travel as regularly into to see their doctor, but more their doctor being able to get insight to them more regularly by using sort of technology. So we are hearing quite a lot about that. Now, one of the things that I think is really important to this whole issue. And one of the things I've seen in certainly this country, in Australia, but also in other countries, is how the payer gets involved in virtual care. So how do you get payments, and how important is that part of this whole experience? So Nacho, I know you and I have talked about this payments and going forward. How does the payer get engaged, whether it's the insurance company, whether it's a combination of the patient and the insurance? How do we, going forward, how do we accommodate this whole area of payer and getting payment for appropriately, I guess, which is all important to the healthcare providers like yourselves. So Nacho, how's your thinking on that side?
That's an interesting question. I can see that there's many people right now asking questions about the cybersecurity aspect of virtual health, and what happens as usual in healthcare informatics is that everything is related. And I was discussing at the beginning of this conversation the need of a framework. There's, as usual, going to be a need of convergence of technologies that allow us to do a full workflow of online visits, including registration, identification of the patient, authentication of the patient. Sorry, somebody's got the phone.
Yeah.
And it goes all the way to the physical examination of the patients and what are we able to do with the physical examination online, and what is appropriate and what is not, until the end of the virtual care visit, where the doctor has to prescribe something or order something and then charge for it. So we're going to have very different scenarios. We're already talking about online payments, e-payments, etc. But we have different scenarios where the virtual visit could be just a package, right? Where you see a doctor and that's a fixed price. And the doctor will probably ask you to come to the hospital or not. And it may include some pharmacy, That's the easy part. Then there will be the one where it's completely self-paid, with more complications. And then the most complicated one is definitely was going to be, part of it will be self-paid and part of it will be by a third-party payer.
Right.
Obviously, what we need for that is a deep integration of all the technologies that we have to provide the virtual care with systems like the one that your company provides, Kerry.
Yes.
And a deep integration between the online systems and the billing systems in the hospital information system, right? And that's easier said than done, because as you know, to prepare a bill, it involves a large number of people in the hospital, and it's something that is not done in real time sometimes. It will also need a lot of integration with the insurance companies, which at the moment, depending in which country you are, they are not really, number one, they don't standardize their codes for their billing. And the other problem that they have is that, the sooner that this is done, the sooner they have to pay. So sometimes at the moment, they may not be willing to participate in this deep integration because the payment comes fast for them. So I think we have three different industries here trying to work together and figure out how we're going to facilitate payment online, how we're going to facilitate consent online, how we're going to facilitate e-signature, digital ink, so we can be sure that whatever the patient signs cannot be repudiated. And we are starting to do this. We are all starting to build this framework. There's no regulations yet. There's no standard yet. We are building them as we go.
Yeah.
But it needs a conversation between your company, the insurance company, and the hospitals to actually put this framework together and then have some standards of implementation. So we're not improvising this. And we're learning, I think, from everybody's mistakes at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I think this is what we've seen, I guess, is the speed of development in virtual care has been, very fast, very innovative, and there are areas that are certainly, I guess, have been overlooked in this whole process. We could say, how should these have been resolved? But like you say, I think it's a case of there was no real clear book of instructions written before we went into this period of COVID and the need to adapt quickly to telemedicine and virtual care. So I guess it's a case by what you're saying of what we've learned, and now how going forward we can make sure that we introduce some of those standards and things that put us in a better position. With you, Dr. Nee, what's your organisation's thought around the payment and the way of payment and the payment profile? Do you see it similar to Nacho and Bumrungrad, or do you have other thoughts about it?
Yeah, from payment, we develop many kinds of payment. Of course, the best way of payment is that we have to working with the bank, because now the banking system is globally, the currency is global. They even care what the currency is. You can pay in Thai baht, in US dollar, in any currency through the bank. So if we working with the bank for payment for those on online payment or digital, and also we develop something for prepaid system for patients. We just develop our vaccination program protocol for online approaching one day before the vaccination, and then after everything is seeing the doctor, prepaid for the booking for the doctor hour, and then discussing with the doctor, and then design the vaccination program. And then on the other days, the next day, all the vaccines is prepared because everything is paid. And before the patients coming to the hospital, they also paid with all those vaccines. And then they just spend 20 minutes in the hospital, and they love it. Right. They leave with all the documentation they need, and they receive and everything. And that is, we combine with the virtual activity and the daily hospital activity. And we hope that we can get more and more such a kind of activity to decrease the contact time in the hospital and to decrease the crowding of the patients in the hospital with both kind of technology. But for those more complicated payment, I mean for third-party payer, for insurance, and I think it should be combinations. Now there's there are two software working together, Cerner and SAP. One of very keen in the financial side, and Cerner is HIS. So they're working together to make it more conformer of the virtual working and payment and good services too. Thank you.
Yeah. I think that it does lead into another question that I had, and it's I'd ask this of both of you, but maybe Nacho first. In your view, are there collaborations that should be set up to further advance virtual care? Now, collaborations could come into the payment side, where there could be stronger collaborations with organisations that just handle the payment side like in e-payment and other parts of that. But beyond the payment, is there other things where you think collaborations could be advantageous to the further advancement of virtual care? So I'd be interested in your view on that, Archie.
Absolutely. There's nothing that we can do on our own. I think that, again, we're looking at telemedicine from the spectrum of care. So we're talking now about, an online visit, but there's also the part where, we need, for example, maybe for areas where they don't have, let's say, radiology services, to provide teleradiology services. So those studies are read in our hospital on real time, so the doctor can provide the service in another area. Or we could be talking about telemedicine in an area like an operating theater, where the doctor could be assisted virtually by another doctor in another area. There's so many different scenarios that apply to virtual care and telemedicine that I think that there will be a convergence of technologies that will make this easier. The collaborations will go through our technology vendors right now. Could be in the ICU space, could be in the operation theater space, or could be in the primary care space. I think we'll also have collaborations with, of course, the insurance sector, as we discussed before. Of course, there will be a collaboration with AI, AI providers in imaging, for example. We were talking before about the Internet of Things. I think we need to collaborate to them to provide that deep integration between those instruments or that equipment with the hospital. I mean, there's so many pieces that we have to put together in the future to provide quality telemedicine services to our patients. And definitely it's not something that the hospital can do on their own.
Yes.
Wide spectrum. And what I would like to see is to put those scenarios together and think, where do we start?
Yeah.
Which are the areas that actually are safe to start, for example,
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We've been talking, I think our industry, healthcare IT industry, I think hospitals, I think healthcare providers have been talking about being able to monitor patients remotely for many, many years. And there's been many companies get involved in putting these devices in patients' homes and what have you. But I think over this last 18 months is really where we seem to have rapidly moved forward with the technology and trying to accommodate with things like telemedicine. Now, I think we're getting into that point where, it does look possible that we could do, like you say, have monitors in people's homes or wherever they are located, being able to, connect to wearable devices and get information from individuals. So, Dr. Niwad, I'd be interested, to hear from you about what your organisation is thinking, or what you would think about as we go forward, that ability to monitor patients' vital signs, monitor things like glucoses for diabetics and many other things, capture much more data that can inform doctors, can inform the clinicians about their patients and their pending problems that they may have. So I'd be interested to hear your sort of view on where you think we are with that, and does it really fit with what your organisation is thinking about going forward?
Yes, of course we do the care of the technology a lot to gathering all those information, especially from the remote site. I mean, not just only from home, from our network hospital too, because we have a network of hospital of 49 hospitals together and working together as a primary hospital, secondary hospital, and tertiary hospital. So we need something that more format for the patients. I mean, today transportation is very fast. I have one patient who had his accident in one city up in the north, and then they can, it's very easy to transport them to Chiang Mai, and then from Chiang Mai, the other day to Bangkok. But you know, the information is take more time. We don't have the technologies to gathering all those data from different sites or hospital, and then can retrieve it by computer. But it's not just in time. The patient's moving faster than the data now. So yeah. So it's we still have to use the old technologies that the patient, the doctor have to gather all the information, write it down in the referring paper in color, 3 color, 4, 5 colors, something like that, and then send to the one who take care during the way the patients being transported to. So the technology is a barrier from us to gathering all the informations from our network hospital. Yes, with the other industry, like in banking, in transportations technology, the data is moving very fast. But those kind of data is not complicated like medicine data in hospital. We have the CT scan, we have the MRI, we have the blah blah blah, and which is very different from the company who is the owner, I mean the vendor of all those equipment, which are different kind of data, source of data. So it's now one of the things we have to thinking about those gathering all those data, sharing, and how can it working together to make it more easy for all those equipment to sharing the informations and catch up the transportation of the patients.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Niwan. I think it's obvious, and it'll be obvious to our audience that not only is there interest in the region and certainly around the world in telehealth and virtual care, but I think there's a strong acceptance by some of our leading hospitals like yourselves, hospital groups like yourselves, that it's not only played a place over this last 18 months, but it is also now opened it up to looking at how can we use virtual healthcare going forward. I also recognise that I think patients are more apt now to be wanting to take more responsibility for their own healthcare and get more directly involved. So can you see, and maybe Nacho, I'd ask you this question, can you see that the patients want to get more involved, and how do you think they'll adjust to the technology? Like Dr. Niwat says, people have come used to electronic banking and online banking, but healthcare is so much more complex. But do you think there's a willingness from patients and doctors to really, take this technology and this virtual care forward? I think as organisations, we all agree it's in the organisation's interest, but what do you think about the individuals? Do you think there's a commitment from patients and from the clinicians to really push this forward? What do you think, Nacho?
Well, I certainly think that there is an unstoppable trend from everybody to to use mobile devices to take care of their health. But like everything, there's segments of population that will be able to use it, and segments of populations that will not. Age or mobility or any other problems, and it goes both on the patient side and on the doctor side. But I think that certainly, again, we need to think about what is right to do from your mobile device or from a device at home, and what is not right to do. So in the area of anti-aging, for example, or if you are on the area of vital signs, obesity, etc., monitoring that, people are starting to do it on their own. I mean, they use Apple Watches, they use Fitbits, etc. Yeah. Now we're going to something a bit deeper, where both the doctors and the patients need to respond to an alert, or need to really respond to a clinical problem. The responsibility still lays on the hospital. And there has to be a dialogue with the patient, in which cases they can use their devices at home as a complement to what they do in the hospital. Are patients more willing to do this these days? Sure. If it's not the patient, it's the patient's family. I mean, here also, Dr. Newat will also have international patients. So we're talking about different cultures, different regions, and different access to health. So obviously, there's a benefit of being able to monitor remotely the health of a patient. And if you explain this to a patient, surely they will accept it. But again, it needs to be done carefully, because not everything can be done online. And we have discussed this many times, Kerry, when there's a critical alert from a patient that you're monitoring remotely, you have the responsibility to act upon it and provide a positive outcome. And that is also easier said than done. So then which systems do we have that actually allow us to respond to a critical alert when somebody is monitored remotely? And which alerts are critical and which ones are not? So doctors, for example, may be I'm not saying they're not willing to participate, but they want to know they cannot be 24 hours a day monitoring patients' vital signs. We need, again, a convergence of technologies that allow us to filter those critical alerts, and to also lead those critical alerts to the group of clinicians that need to take action on it. And we are learning a lot about this. So I think there is a will to have more participation digitally and be monitored from home. But what the patients and the doctors want is, like, when something happens, what do we do?
Yeah, and this is, it's a good question. There's many unanswered questions about this whole topic, isn't there? You talked about standardization of data. You're now talking about clinical safety. How, who takes responsibility of that? How do we learn, some of the pitfalls in both the technology and in the actual workflows and the treatment of patients, and literally the feeling, and are we improving patients' well-being and satisfaction doing this type of virtual care? So how, and I'll ask you, we're getting close to the end of our session, so I'd like to ask you both, actually, how do you see, I'm talking to both of you as two individual organisations, but obviously both organisations have learnt a lot over this last 18 months, 2 years, with telemedicine and going into virtual healthcare. But how do you see organisations, not just your two organisations, but organisations around the world? Do you think there's a need for them to actually get together and share, experiences, and to share in order to come up with best practice, and in order to not repeat the bad things but improve the good things? How do you see that working? Do you see yourselves getting together as organisations, as a group, and having group, conversations and having this as a forum, or do you think government or private bodies should organise these type of exchange of information on virtual care? What do you think, Dr. Niwat? Are you likely, or is your organisation thinking about, talking with other organisations and sharing the experience? What's your thinking?
My answer is, of course, yes, because in our healthcare sector, we are used to this kind of conference with all kind of medicine. I mean, we are developing very fast in the medicine because we have this kind of conference or conversations or sharing the informations among each cohort or each individual hospital. So I love to do that kind of thing, as you mentioned. I would like to answer some of the answer on the line before we end of our time. Charging of the telemedicine has to be, for my opinion, just my opinion, has to be prepaid and limitation of the time, and it has to be charged as the time consumed. And about the privacy or the confidentiality, that is one of the things we have to develop it, because this is very new for us. We cannot use the way we use in the conventional way in the hospital in the telemedicine. And one of the things is patient identifications. We have, as I mentioned before, we're working with the bank to identify that the patient is the real one. I mean, not the other person who just trying to be the another patient to show up on the screen and then have a very hard dealing with the insurance company. So this is another story we have to develop in the futures. And of course, you cannot replace the conventional medicine with the telemedicine. We should develop something that is just used to that kind of approaching and interconnection with the patient and the doctor. That's just my opinion and answer within a very short time.
Thank you very much. Look, I'm sorry we've run out of time. I think as we've seen just through this last 45 minutes, there's so much to understand, there's so much to talk about, there's so much experience that we've gained over the last 18 months and 2 years. I think we can see that there is a commitment from prestigious organisations like yourselves or your organisations and you as individuals. There is a commitment to this going forward. It's obviously going to take a lot more talking, a lot more collaboration, a lot more thinking, and of course the consistent improvement of technology and companies like InterSystems working in with organisations like yourself to make sure that we're not just creating technical solutions, but we're creating solutions that can benefit both the clinicians and the patients alike. So there's many questions that have come through on the chat. I'm sorry we haven't been able to get to those, but please, for those people that have posed questions, you could go to the InterSystems virtual booth and ask questions there, and we have a team of people sitting there that will dutifully answer or try to answer your questions and respond. And please visit the InterSystems virtual booth anyway. And I'd just like to thank both Dr. Niwa and Nacho. Thank you so much for your time. I think it's been a great session and really appreciate your commitment to this today. So thank you, and handing back to you, Cindy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kerry. Thank you, Nashua.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Inesio, Dr. Niwat, and Mr. Stratton for that wonderful session. Virtual care looks set to be the future of healthcare, and indeed, more collaborations on issues such as payments and security can help to really advance virtual care. We'll now take a short break, and when we are back, we will have our next panel discussion on the role of labs in the future of healthcare. Do also take some time to explore our platform, which allows you to network and chat with your fellow participants. Remember, the more interactions you have, the higher you would be on our leaderboard, and the top 3 on the leaderboard will win attractive prizes. See you all at 2 p.m.